Hello, hello everybody. Myself Dr. B.S. Patil. Today I am making a presentation on behalf of my colleague Kim Kuto. The content writer of this module 1 is Kim Kuto and I am making a presentation on her behalf. The module 1 is relating to access to justice and analyzing of its concept, history and evolution. And in today's presentation, I will be going through the meaning of justice, and when we go through the meaning, it has got two components, traditional as well as a modern view over the meaning. Then from justice we move on to access to justice. That is what the main topic of today's discussion, and here again we are having two components, traditional as well as modern view. And finally, I end my presentation with a discussion on the mechanisms to ensure this access to justice. So, to start with today's presentation, the object behind this presentation is to make you understand the concept of justice and its significance, the conceptual analysis and the framework, and identify and recognize various mechanisms which ensure such access to justice. To understand the concept of justice, it is necessary to know the concept of law. The law and justice are so closely related with each other that they are as good as the two sides of a same coin. The justice and the law, the relationship, again I want to quote another example, that it is like a pen and an ink. A pen without ink is of no use. Similarly, a ink without pen may not be put to proper use. So, similarly, law and justice has to be kept together. So, one of the jurists has mentioned very beautifully that law without justice is blind and a justice without law is lame. So, therefore, in the beginning I just want to spend some time understanding what is law, but as the topic is connected with the justice and access to justice, I may not be able to go through with the definition of law elaborately. So, in the beginning, what is law and what is justice is going to be our first task to clarify. So, what is law? So, there have been many jurists working on this concept of law, and many jurists have also come up with various definitions of law. But one final conclusion that we can draw is that law, justice, these are the concepts which cannot be explained or defined from one's point of view. They are two broader concepts, but nonetheless the efforts of these philosophers have not gone waste, as it is you may recall the names, the philosophers Aristotle, St. Thomas Aquinas, Roscoe, Kelsen. These jurists have come up with their own definitions of law, and these definitions has brought us, may not be a complete foolproof definition, but definitely it has brought a lot of clarification in understanding the law. In a similar vein, it is also necessary for us to know the definition of justice, and the definition of justice differ from person to person and definitely differs from time to time and culture to culture, and there is no acceptable definition of justice that exists in this world. To explain my point of view, let me take up an example of, say, moral policing. Moral policing is being defined and it is been considered to be a wrong by many of the legal luminaries, but many of the traditionalists find moral policing as the necessary evil which has to exist in this society. To take an example from one culture to another culture, there is a concept called as white man's burden. Now, this white man's burden is the burden which an European carried with him wherever he went to colonize the world. So, the colonizer thought that there is uncivilization exists in rest of the world other than Europe, and he is under the burden to civilize the rest of the world. So, that is his justification for the act of bringing in civilization. But wherein the other parts of the world, where they try to impose their views on this, the culture, the traditionalists felt that it is an attack on their existence. So, this again led to two different views. So, justice according to white man is different, and justice according to the traditionals and the locals is different. So, this conflict of views do exist while defining the definition. So, therefore, what we can do is, what we can finally conclude is, justice is a concept which is influenced by politics, ideology, religion, ethics, culture, and etc. So, therefore, rather than looking into what is justice, let us look into the justice as we understand. So, understanding of justice is of two kinds. There is a traditional view to justice, as well as there is a modern view to justice. What traditionally we look at justice? As Plato has mentioned, justice is performing fair and just actions, giving each person their due, sense of being fair, sense of being equal, moral and impartial, and treating all of them equally is justice. So, traditionally justice is a behavioral pattern between the two individuals. So, whenever I treat other person fairly, equitably and impartially, I tend to do justice. So, justice in Indian context, justice takes over the role of dharma. So, according to this, a person who treats everybody equally is acting according to dharma. So, this is how traditionally we look at justice. So, if you closely analyze the traditional view, the justice has got three attributes. The attribute number 1 is fairness, equality, and finally, it is impartiality. Now, fairness. Now, let us take fairness for the discussion. Fairness means absence of discrimination. Fairness is acting without bias, and as long as a person acts without discrimination and without bias is considered to be a fair person, and it is one of the important component of justice. Next is equality. Now, equality, to explain equality, it has got 4 components, that is fair distribution of benefits among all stakeholders is important component of equality. Similarly, in the same line, the same equality should be shown in distribution of burden also, not only the benefits, burden also. Equals should be treated equally and unequals should be treated unequally. So, these are the 4 things which constitute equality. Then comes the final component, that is impartiality. So, impartiality is a hallmark of justice, where absence of prejudice is what is expected in idea of justice. So, prejudice cannot go hand in hand with the justice process. So, absence of prejudice has to be shown to establish impartiality of a person. So, these are the 3 important components of justice in a traditional sense. Let us say, for example, if a teacher gives same marks for the 2 students, let us take an example of a test, a spelling test. A girl secures full out of out marks in the test, and she is not happy with that, because even in spite of scoring out of out, she got only star. But whereas the other girl who has scored out of out, but got a golden star. According to the child, she is being treated unfairly, because there is an absence of fairness, there is absence of equality, there is an absence of impartiality. So, this is how the traditionally justice could be understood, and the same understanding continued in many of the legal systems. In Magna Carta, that is a great charter in drafted in 1215, to no one will we sell, to no one will we deny or delay right or justice. So, that is how the traditionally we took up the understanding of justice, but modern view is quite different from the traditional view. The main difference is the dissociation of concept of justice from that of religion. For the first time in a modern view, justice is looked upon as a different altogether from the religion.